making Irish Car Bomb cupcakes for our St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to start off with two just standard muffin tins lined with cupcake liners that are just gold metallic, so they're going to look like lots of gold. And to start off, you need to mix your dry ingredients. We have 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. And I'm going to go ahead and add the Dutch processed cocoa powder. This is just processed with alkali, so it gives it a more red tint, kind of pretty, a more vibrant colored chocolate. We're going to get this all mixed
incorporated
through. Yeah.
Looks like that could easily cause a giant mess.
Oh yes, see, already starting. Got a bit of a smaller bowl, so I'm trying to be careful so I don't knock it out, but you could be more vigorous with your whisking if you had a larger bowl. Just want to make sure that the salt and the baking soda in particular are well mixed so that the cupcakes will rise equally, since the baking soda is our main leavening. Alright, that's done.
What does that look like when it's all nice and thoroughly incorporated there?
Looks like cocoa mix.
Okay.
Just the flour, sugar, cocoa.
Nice and
salt.
homogeneous looking. Yeah, okay.
Pretty much. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Okay.
Alright, now we're going to beat the eggs.
How many eggs do you have in
We've
there?
got 2 large eggs.
2 large eggs.
And 2/3 cup of sour cream.
Sour cream, okay. Why sour cream?
Probably because it adds a bit of richness to it, almost like buttermilk. A lot of cakes will have either buttermilk or sour cream added to them to add a little bit of, well, a lot of moisture.
Okay.
And a little bit of a tang to it.
Right.
Makes a nice balanced cake. See that mixing? Looks pretty good. Then scrape the bowl.
Okay. Why is that?
You don't want your ingredients will get stuck to the bottom,
Okay.
and so it's always good to scrape the bowl to make sure everything gets well incorporated. You don't want a bunch of smears of sour cream at the very bottom.
Okay.
And now we're going to melt a cup of butter with a cup of Guinness Stout.
Beer and butter. Delicious.
We'll wait for that to melt down. Alright, we've got our Guinness and butter mixture melted down. I'm going to pour that into a measuring cup so it can kind of cool a little bit as we pour it in. And it'll be easier to pour into the mixer. Okay.
Do you need to do anything to make sure that it doesn't turn your eggs in there into
No, I'm just going to
scrambled eggs,
I'm
or?
going to cool it slightly. And once everything starts mixing, I'm going to turn the mixer on before I start pouring it in, so that'll help
Okay.
make everything. That feels cool enough.
Just kind of a little warm,
Yeah, take a
but
little
not
time.
hot.
Yeah, not. I didn't bring it to a total boil either. So
Just let the butter come down. melt.
melt, yeah. So I'm gonna lock the bowl and start like a medium. It's best just to pour it in a slow, steady stream. That way you don't get anything splattered out on you. All right. I'm going to grab a measuring cup here and start. A little bit more than half is what I'm putting in. I go ahead and lock that, and I like to pulse it a couple of times so I make sure the entire kitchen isn't coated.
You don't get any bloom?
Yeah. I've done it many times before, so try to be careful. And once it gets mixed, just let it go. Now I'm going to scrape it down, make sure everything's getting well incorporated. All the way to the bottom. Alright. And the rest of the dry ingredients. And again, kind
Pulse
of
it again.
go slow. That should be it. You don't want to whip it too much because you'll incorporate too much air. When you get too much air in your batter, you get lots of bubbles.
Okay.
So, which isn't very desirable in a cake.
Okay. You're looking for dense moistness.
Yeah. This is the pancake pin. And you just fill it from the bottom. It's got a little tip on it. There is a cake pin that I like using, just one size. I don't need anything.
Shout out to Jack.
Yes, I saw it on Jack's
Cooking with Jack.
Cooking with Jack, yes. And I saw his review of it for the pancake. I believe it was the pancake one. And it's really handy when you do mini muffin tins because that's a lot of filling tins, and it's nice just to have a little squeeze bottle that you can refill.
In goes the good stuff.
A little bit of mess. And you're going to want to fill the cupcake liners about a little over half to 3/4 full. That way you don't get any spillover. See, in there you can just squeeze and go straight to the next tin without having to scoop anything and get drips all over the top of your tin that get baked on and you can never get off.
Really good application for this device.
Yeah, and you can control your pour and make sure that they're all even so you don't have some that are overfilled or underfilled.
Excuse me.
That's always the kids' favorite part.
Of course.
And before I put them in the oven, I'm going to give them a little tap. You can see there's a couple air bubbles that are coming up to the surface across the top. So by tapping them on the counter, you're going to force the air bubbles up to the surface so that they're not baked into the cake, so they're nice and dense. We're going to place these in a 350-degree preheated oven, and they will bake for 17 minutes. I'm probably going to check them midway through since I'm putting them on the opposite side of the oven and top and bottom, and we'll rotate them so that make sure they get evenly baked. All right, we're going to make the ganache filling that's going to go into our cupcakes, and this is flavored with Jameson Irish whiskey. This is 2/3 cup of heavy cream that we're going to heat up. And you're just going to, don't bring it up to boiling, just need to scald it, get it heated through so that we can melt the chocolate chips. And this is 8 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. And watch the cream because it will burn. So you gotta be careful that it doesn't scorch. It's just starting to bubble around the edges, so it's got a good enough heat on it. We stirred it a couple of times. Gonna give it one more good stir, make sure it's nice and hot. I'll turn the burner off. I'm gonna pour this directly over the chocolate chips. And kind of let that sit for a minute. Now we can start slowly whisking the heavy cream into the chips. And this is basically how you make chocolate ganache. So we're just gonna whisk this until all the chips are melted down and nice and smooth.
What happens if you don't get it just right and say there's not enough left, residual heat left in there to...
I'm gonna put a little bit of boiling water on and set the bowl over the top of it.
Okay.
And that way it gets indirect heat from the steamed water.
Okay.
And then you basically just set your bowl over the top.
Finish it off.
And this is also good to keep it at the right consistency.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to use ganache for pouring.
So it's a little, yeah, you
yeah,
can see in there, it's a little
some
lumpy in there.
So it's all nice and smooth now.
Okay.
No more lumps. All the way across.
Silky.
And now I'm going to add, the original recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of Jameson Irish whiskey. The first time I made it, I tried it with the 2 teaspoons and I didn't get much of the whiskey flavor at all. So I'm doing about 2.5 tablespoons. I bumped it up quite a bit. So it has a nice strong whiskey flavor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, all nice and incorporated.
Okay.
So we're going to set this aside and going to start pouring the cupcakes. You can use a large pastry tip to kind of set a little hole across the tops of these, kind of a guide to dig the cake out, so you've got a little spot to fill with ganache. And you can just take the tip of a spoon and scoop out a little bit of cake. All right, so we're going to pour our ganache into the centers of the cupcakes. So you just want to fill it up to just a little bit
below the top?
Yeah. We're going to make the Bailey's Irish buttercream. I'm making it kind of the way that my mother's American buttercream is made. 1 cup of butter to 1 cup of shortening. And this is 5 cups of powdered sugar. I'm going to lock that in place. And then it calls for 6 tablespoons of Bailey's Irish cream. And this is very important to start slow with this because powdered sugar will fly. I'm going to go ahead and cover it up. You can hear it.
Doing its thing.
This is what the icing looks like. Once it's ready, it's all nice and whipped, has a good consistency. So I'm going to start putting it in my decorating bag that I have a decorative tip on. You could just spread this on with a offset spatula or spoon.
All right.
We're just going to finish this off with some little green sugar sprinkles. And that's it. The Irish Car Bomb cupcake.